Today we're gonna read some, business book about. Uh, it's called Zero to One by Peter Thiel with Blake Masters. So let's learn some business stuff. so, uh so preface. Okay, let's read for a while. Preface, maybe it makes sense and interesting. Every moment in business happens only once. The next Bill Gates will not build on an operating system. The next Larry Page or Sergey Brin would make a search engine. And the next Mark Zuckerberg would create a social network. If you're copying these guys, you're not learning from them. Of course, it's easier to copy a model than to make something new. Doing what we already know how to do takes the world from one to n, adding more of something familiar. But every time we create something new, we go from zero to one. The act of creation is singular, as is the moment of creation, and the result is something fresh and strange unless they invest in the difficult task of creating new things. American companies will fail in the future no matter how big their profits remain today. What happens when we gain everything to be had from fine tuning the old lines of business that we inherited? Question mark. Unlike as it sounds, the answer threatens to be far worse than the crisis of 2008. Today's best practices lead uh, to deed to dead ends. The best path is new and untried. In a world of gigantic administrative bureaucracies, both public and private, searching for a new path might seem like hoping for a miracle. Actually, if American business is going to succeed, we are going to need hundreds or even thousands of miracles. And this would be depressing, but for one crucial fact, humans distinguish it from other species by our ability to work miracles. We call these miracles technology. Technology is miraculous because it allows us to do more with less. Exactly. Ratcheting. What is it? Yeah, commercial break for checking out definition. Ratchet, meaning a device consisting of a bar. Ratchet. Okay, a device consisting of a bar or wheel with a set of angled teeth in which a pole, cog, or tooth engage allowing motion in one direction only. Another definition: a bar or wheel that forms part of a ratchet. I didn't get. So, ratcheting up our fundamental capabilities to a higher level. Yeah, in other words, technology allow us go further, faster. Get the progress faster. I think actually, technology it is synonym of the progress. Other animals instinctively driven to build things like dams or honeycombs, but we are the only ones that can invent new things and better ways of making them. Humans don't decide what to build by making choices from some cosmic catalog of options given in advance. Instead, by creating new technologies, we rewrite the plan of the world. These are the kind of elementary truths they teach to second graders, but they're easy to forget in a world where so much of what we do is repeat what has been done before. 0 to 1 is about how to build companies that create new things. It draws on everything I learned directly as co-founder of PayPal and Palantir, and then an investor in hundreds of startups, including Facebook and SpaceX. So, in other words, the author of this book, co-founder of PayPal and Palantir, I don't know what is Palantir, sorry, but I mean, it is not like some motivational bullshit uh, author who just talking about business, but have zero experience about it. But why I choosing this book, because the author is a real businessman. He had experience. Yeah, I think his ideas, insights, going to be useful. So, but while I have noticed many patterns and I relate them there, this book offers no formula for success. The paradox of teaching entrepreneurship is that such formula necessarily cannot exist because every innovation is new and unique. No authority can prescribe in concrete terms how to be innovative. Indeed, the single most powerful pattern I have noticed it is that successful people find value in unexpected places and do this by thinking about business from first principles instead of formulas. This book stems from a course about startups I taught at Stanford in 2012. College students can become extremely skilled at a few specialties, but many never learn what to do with those skills in the wider world. My primary goal in teaching the class was to help my students see beyond the tracks laid down by academic specialties to the broader future that is there to create. Yeah, that's the problem of this university is that there's so much theory but zero practice. Yeah, like you can see professor who have tons of books about business but zero experience, and it's just mean, you know, it it's not going to be practical. His advices. Maybe some of them going to be useful, but it's better to listen people who had real experience. One of those students, Blake Masters, took detailed class notes which circulated far beyond the campus, and in 0 to 1 I have worked with him to revise the notes for a wider audience. There is no reason why the future should happen only at Stanford or in college or in Silicon Valley. So, it seems this one chapter number one, but without calling chapter or whatever. Okay, the challenge of the future. It's a title. Whenever I interview someone for a job, I like to ask this question: What important truth do very few people agree with you on? Interesting question. What important truth do very few people agree with you on? This question sounds easy because it's straightforward. Actually, it's really hard to answer. It's intellectually difficult because the knowledge that everyone is taught in school is by definition agreed upon, and it's psychologically difficult because anyone trying to answer most saying and it's psychologically difficult because anyone trying to answer must say something she knows to be unpopular. Brilliant thinking is rare, but courage is even shorter supply than genius. Most commonly, I hear answers like following our education system is broken and urgently needs to be fixed. America is exceptional. So there is no God. Also saying those are bad answers. The first and second statements might be true, but many people already agree with them. The third statement simply takes one side in a familiar debate. A good answer take the following form: most people believe in X, but the truth is the opposite of X. I will give my own answer later in this chapter. What does this contrarian question have to do with the future? In the most minimal sense, the future is simply the set of all moments yet to come. But what makes the future distinctive and important isn't that it hasn't happened yet, but rather than it will be a time when the world looks different from today. In this sense, if nothing about our society changes for the next 100 years, then the future is over 100 years away. If things can, if things change radically in the next decade, then the future is nearly at hand. No one can predict the future exactly, but we know two things: it's going to be different and it must be rooted in today's world. Most answers to the contrarian questions are different ways to seem to present good answers as the close as we can come to looking into the future. It's reminded me another book, Anti-Fragile. Maybe you know, guys, this book about kind of metaphorical black swan. Black swan. Uh, it's so okay. Anti-Fragile. It's a book by Nassim Taleb, and by Black Swan, he calling in this book some unpredictable things which happens in our life, in our society, like some bad things that could happen. He calling Black Swan in this book, and the point of this book was very useful that you can't never predict when this black swan will come, but it's definitely come. You just have to be, prepared. It could be, economical crisis or whatever. So, next chapter or next title of this book is Zero to One: The Future of Progress. So, when we think about the future, we hope for a future of progress. That progress can take one of two forms. Horizontal or extensive progress means copying things that work going from 1 to n. Horizontal progress is easy to imagine because we already know what it looks like. Vertical or intensive progress means doing new things, going from 0 to 1. Vertical progress is harder to imagine because it requires doing something nobody else has ever done. If you take one typewriter and build 100, you have made horizontal progress. If you have a typewriter and build a word processor, you have made vertical progress. And after we see image with the vertical line and text like vertical or intensive progress, doing new things, and horizontal line with the text like horizontal or extensive progress, copying things that work. Oh, that's the good point actually, When we're copying something, it is horizontal progress, and when we're doing something new, but I think it's not everything what is new. It is not 100% new. It's just how Steve Jobs said, new things is just the remix of old things. Yeah, but I like this the image, how author explained the progress. If you're doing something new, it's a vertical progress, and if you're doing, if you're just copying someone else good business, it is horizontal progress. So at the macro level, the single word for horizontal progress is globalization, taking things that work somewhere and making them work everywhere. Again, at the macro level, the single word for horizontal progress is globalization, taking things that work somewhere and making them work everywhere. Yeah, globally, globalization, yeah, makes sense. So China is the paradigmatic example of globalization. Its 20-year plan is to become like the United States is today. The Chinese have been straightforwardly copying everything that has worked in the developed world: 19th century railroads, 20th century air conditioning, and even entire cities. They might skip a few steps along the way, going straight to wireless about installing landlines, for instance, but they're copying all the same. Yeah, that's actually a good point. By this logic, uh, China should progress in a horizontal way because they're just copying, they're not innovating. Uh, but at the same time, it is a second world economy. You know, that's that's why I think author calling this confusion paradigmatic economic situation of China. So the single word for vertical 0 to 1 progress is technology. The rapid progress of information technology in recent decades has made Silicon Valley the capital of technology in general. But there's no reason why technology should be limited to computers. But, I say that Chinese just copying, but it's not completely like this. They're also doing new things, which is better. Just look at the TikTok. Why China, why US wanna ban TikTok? I heard very good point because Silicon Valley can't compete with the Chinese algorithms, which is working much better. Okay, properly understood, any new and better way of doing things is technology. Okay, again, okay, let's read from the lines before. The single word for vertical 0 to 1 progress is technology. The rapid progress of information technology in recent decades has made Silicon Valley the capital of technology in general, but there is no reason why technology should be limited to computers. Properly understood, any new and better way of doing things is technology. Yeah, we use it to think that technology related just with computers, but in general, mm, everything that improved kind of also like technology. Yeah, and after we see, another graphic with a vertical line and their text technology 0 to 1, and horizontal line with the text globalization 0 to N. Hmm, interesting. Globalization has no limits, 0 to 1. Because globalization and technology are different modes of progress, it's possible to have both, either or neither at the same time. For example, 1815 to 19 14 was a period of both rapid technological development and rapid globalization. Between the First World War and Kissinger's trip to open relations with China in 1971, there was rapid technological development, but not much globalization. Since 1971, we have seen rapid globalization along with limited technological development, mostly confined to IT. This age of globalization has made it easy to imagine that the decades ahead will bring more convergence and more sameness. Let's look up to the convergence. It's mean convergence. So the process or state of convergence of lines, distance, biology, the tendency of unrelated animals and plants to evolve superficially similar. Process of converging, like a progress, another synonym of progress, I guess. Okay. Even our everyday language suggests that we believe in kind of technological end of history. Yeah, that's also a good point. Mm, the language which we speak today is the result of evolution, like of language in general. Like 200 years ago, there was a different language. Let's say English, Spanish. It was sounds different. Yeah. So the division of the world into the so-called developed and developing nations implies that the developed world has already achieved the achievable, and that poorer nations just need to catch up. But I don't think that's true. My own answer to the contrarian question is that most people think the future of the world will be defined by globalization, but the truth is that technology matters more. Without technological change, if China doubles its energy production over the next 2 decades, it will also double its air pollution. If every one of India's hundreds of millions of households were to live the way Americans already do, using only today's tools, the result would be environmentally catastrophic. Spreading old ways to create wealth around the world will result in devastation, not riches. In a world of scarce, what is it? Scarce adjective of food, money, or some other resources insufficient for the man. Okay, as raw materials become scarce, synthetic were developed. In other words, not natural, artificial when the quality of things gets worse. Another definition: occur in small numbers or quantities, rare. So, in a world of scarce resources, not enough resources, in other words, globalization without new technology is unsustainable. New technology has never been an automatic feature of history where ancestors lived in a static zero-sum societies where success meant seizing things from others. They created new sources of wealth only rarely, and in the long run, they could never create enough to save the average person from an extremely hard life. Then, after 10,000 years of fitful advance from primitive agriculture to medieval meat mills and 16th century astrolabes, the modern world suddenly experienced experienced relentless technological progress from the advent of the steam engine in the 1760s all the way up to about 1970. As a result, we have inherited a richer society than any previous generation would have been able to imagine. Any generation excepting our parents and grandparents, that is, in the late 1960s, they expected this progress to continue. They looked forward to a 4-day work week, energy too cheap to meter, and vacations on the moon. But it didn't happen. The smartphones that distract us from our surroundings also distract us from the fact that our surroundings are strangely old. Only computers and communication have improved dramatically since mid-century. That doesn't mean our parents were wrong to imagine a better future. They were only wrong to expect it as something automatic. Today, our challenge is to both imagine and create the new technology that can make the 21st century more peaceful and prosperous than the 20th. Yeah, this is another good point that without internet, without computers, we kinda gonna be um, like there's no different in our life, like in 20 centuries. Yeah, that's a good point. But another point that everything related with internet and computers, like medicine, sport, like all majors now connected to that, and I don't know, it's controversial because of internet, because of computers. Other things also developed. The speed of information increased. If back in the days we have to, it's also related with logistics. You saving money, time to logistics. Like instead of sending some simple email with post office and waiting answer 2 weeks, you just can clicking the button and getting answer, sending email immediately, getting answer immediately, just about few seconds, minutes. Yeah, but it is also, I agree that it's not maybe uh, improved all majors, all prospects of our life. That's the point, I think. So the next chapter, the title is Startup Thinking. New technology tends to come from new venture startups, from the founding fathers in politics to the Royal Society in science to Fairchild Semiconductors Traders Aid in business. Small groups of people bound together by a sense of mission have changed the world for the better. The easiest explanation for this is negative. It's hard to develop new things in big organizations, and it's even harder to do it by yourself. Bureaucratic hierarchies move slowly, and entrenched interests shy away from risk. In the most distinctional organizations, signaling that work is being done becomes better strategy for career advancement than actually doing work. Hmm. Signaling that work is being done becomes a better strategy for career advancement than actually doing work. If this describes your company, you should quit now. And the other extreme, a lone genius might create a classic work of art or literature, but he could never create an entire industry. Startups operate on the principle that you need to work with other people to get stuff done, but you also need to stay small enough so that you actually can. It's uh, remember. I remember the another phrase of maybe Jeff Bezos, the quote of Jeff Bezos, I guess. Um, like it sounds like if you can't feed your whole team with two pizzas, you're not small enough. Something like this, you know. Yeah, the point is that you have to optimize everything in your business, in your team. You have to think to about each position. Do you need this person or not? Is it person wasting your money or give you a benefit to your company? So positively defined, a startup is the largest group of people you can convince of a plan to build a different future. A new company's most important strength is new thinking, even more important than nimbleness. Nimbleness. So let's look up the quality of being nimble. Interesting. I am asking about definition, and it's give me the definition with the same word. Yeah, thanks. I didn't get. So even more important than nimbleness, small size affords space to think. Oh, yeah, this is also a good point. Small size efforts space to think. Yeah, it is also about Steve Jobs' ideology. He liked minimalism. He was removing any, extra stuff about design, about anything, and that's why his products was look so simple and just with a few buttons or design stuff. Yeah, that's another good point. Minimalism is related with these principles. So this book is about the questions you must ask and answer to succeed in the business of doing new things. What follows is not a manual or record of knowledge, but an exercise in thinking. Oh, that's the good point. I have to highlight this one. What follows is not a manual. Let me read that again. What follows is not a manual or record of knowledge, but an exercise in thinking. Exercise in thinking. Because that is what a startup has to do. Question received ideas and rethink business from scratch. Yeah, it's another good quote. Question received ideas and rethink business from scratch. Yeah, we don't have to, live in daily routine stuff. We have to question everything and rethink about everything in order to improve that. So next chapter called "Party Like It's 1999." Our contrarian question: what important truth do very few people agree with you on? Sorry, maybe it's time to drink a bottle of water. Oh yeah. So our contrarian question: what important truths do very few people agree with you on? It's difficult to answer directly. It's maybe easier to start with a preliminary. Preliminary. What the fuck is that? Preliminary. So, preliminary definition denoting an action or event uh, preceding or done in preparation for something fuller or more important. Preliminary talks, denoting an action or event preceding or done in preparation for something. Like preparation for something, I guess, the definition, simple definition, preliminary. So it may be easier to start with a preliminary. What does everybody agree on? Madness is rare in individuals, but in groups, parties, nations, and ages it is the rule. Nietzsche wrote before he went mad. Madness is rare in individuals, but in groups, parties, nations, and ages it is the rule. Yes. Yes, actual good point. Another good point that when you see someone alone, you know, he or she acts like calm, normal person. But when you see the group of people, they act like in an emotional way. It could be, you know, positive way and negative way, but it is always, emotional way. That's the point, I guess. So the first question should be with your team, what does everybody agree on? If you can identify a delusional popular belief, if you can identify a delusional popular belief, you can find what lies hidden behind it, the contrarian truth. Consider an elementary proposition. Companies exist to make money, not to lose it. Yeah, that's the point of whole business, making money. Agree. This should be obvious to any thinking person, but it wasn't so obvious to many in the late 1990s when no loss was too big to be described as an investment in an even bigger, brighter future. The conventional wisdom of the new economy accepted page views as a more authoritative, forward-looking financial metric than something as pedestrian as profit. Yeah, so many academic words that I didn't get. I have to read that again and just make it simple. But in general, I like when sorry. In general, I like when authors telling something in a simple way, not make it complicated, using some academical bullshit vocabulary. So let's read this one again. This should be obvious to any thinking person, but it wasn't so obvious to many in the late 1990s when no loss was too big to be described as an investment in an even bigger, brighter future. The conventional wisdom of the new economy accepted page views as a more authoritative, forward-looking financial metric than something as pedestrian as profit. Yeah, in other words, back in the days, 1990s, there was no big attention to making profit. Conventional beliefs only ever come to appear arbitrary and wrong in retrospect. Whenever one collapses, we call the old belief a bubble. But the distortions caused by bubbles don't disappear when they pop. The internet craze of the '90s was the biggest bubble since the crash of 1929, and the lessons learned afterward define and distort almost all thinking about technology today. The first step to thinking clearly is to question what we think we know about the past. Yeah, it's about questioning our old knowledge because if back in old knowledge maybe back in the days was like a fit in time, but now time changed and we have to rethink that. A quick history of the 90s. The 1990s have a good image. We tend to remember them as prosperous, optimistic decade that happened to end with the internet boom and bust, but many of those years were not as cheerful as our nostalgia holds. We have long since forgotten the global context for the 18 months of dot-com mania at decade's end. The 90s started with a burst of euphoria when the Berlin Wall calmed down in November 1999. It was short-lived. By mid-1990s, the United States was in a recession. Technically, the downturn ended in March 91, but recovery was slow and employment continued to rise until July 92. Manufacturing never fully rebounded. The shift to a service economy was protracted and painful. 1992, though the end of 1994, was a time of general malaise. Malaise? What is it? Malaise, malaise. Give me the definition. Malaise. Okay, malaise. It's general feeling of discomfort, illness, or uneasiness whose exact cause is difficult to identify. Feeling of discomfort, but you don't know the reason. Malaise. Malaise. Okay. Images of dead American soldiers in Mogadishu looped on cable news. Anxiety about globalization and the US competitiveness intensified as jobs flowed to Mexico. This pessimistic undercurrent drove then President Bush 41 out of office and won Ross Perot nearly 20% of popular vote in 92, the best showing for a third-party candidate since Theodore Roosevelt in 1912. And whatever the cultural fascination with Nirvana, grunge, and heroin reflected, it wasn't hope or confidence. Silicon Valley felt sluggish too. Sluggish. What is it? Sluggish. Definition: slow moving or inactive. Slow moving or inactive. Okay, in other words, it is synonym of laziness, I guess. Sluggish stream. So, Japan seemed to be winning the semiconductor war. Oh my goodness. A new sentence, new words that I don't know. Semiconductor. A solid substance that has a conductivity between that of an insulator and that of most metals, either due to the addition of an impurity because of temperature, blah blah blah. Solid substance, okay. The internet had yet to take off, partly because its commercial use was restricted until late 1992, and partly due to the lack of user-friendly web browsers. It's telling that when I arrived at Stanford in 1985, economics, not computer science, was the most popular major, but it's still popular major. To most people on campus, the tech sector seemed idiosyncratic or even provincial. Holy shit, really? Yeah, I think they're crying now, especially with with watching what's going on with ChatGPT. Yeah, time changing, and you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. So the internet changed always. The Mosaic browser was officially released in November 1993, giving regular people a way to get online. I didn't know that. I thought it's like old shit Internet Explorer of Microsoft, but it's Mosaic browser. Okay, Mosaic became Netscape, which released its Navigator browser in late 1994. Navigators adoption grew so quickly from about 20% of the browser market in January 1995 to almost 80% less than 12 months later that Netscape was able to IPO in August 95, even though it wasn't yet profitable. Within 5 months, Netscape stock had shot up sounds like shut up, but it's shot up. Okay, shot up from $28 to $174 per share. Other tech companies were booming too. Yeah, internet changed really everything, and it's funny to read now that back in the days people was thinking that people who dealing with technology they kind of provincial. Yeah, I guess it was like I don't know some agriculture stuff or stuff like that. So about shares, other tech companies were booming too. Yahoo went public in April '96 with an 848 million valuation, $848 million valuation, and Amazon followed suit in May '97 at $438 million. By spring of '98, each company's stock had more than quadrupled. It's mean like multiplied or what? Consisting of four parts or elements. Consisting of four parts. Yeah, it's like four times, I guess. Meaning skeptics quadrupled. Okay. Un, dos, tres, cuatro, quadrupled. So skeptics questioned earnings and revenue multiplies higher than those for any non-internet company. It was easy to conclude that the market had gone crazy. This conclusion was understandable but misplaced. In December '96, more than okay, commercial break for water. So in December '96, more than 3 years before the bubble actually burst, Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan warned that irrational exuberance might have unduly escalated asset values. Tech investors were exuberant, but it's not clear that they were so irrational. It is too easy to forget that things were not going very well in the rest of the world or at the time. The East Asian financial crisis hit in July 1997. Crony capitalism and massive foreign debt brought the Thai, Indonesian, and South Korean economies to their knees. The ruble crisis, ruble, what is it? A ruble. The basic monetary unit of Russia and some other forms. The ruble crisis. Like especially related with Russian crisis when Soviet Union collapsed, I guess. The ruble crisis followed in August '98 when Russia hamstrung, but sounds like Armstrong, that cosmonaut. Okay, hamstrung. How to say this correct? Hamstring. Okay. Definition: any of five tendons at the back of a person's knees. Any of five tendons at the back of a person's knee. She pulled the hamstring tendon at the back. Okay, being like at your knees. Okay, hamstring by chronic fiscal deficits devalued its currency and defaulted on its debt. Yeah, in other words, it was economical crisis in Soviet Union, ex-Soviet Union. Yeah, because in '89, it's already because in '91, Soviet Union already collapsed. So, American investors grew nervous about nation with 10,000 nukes and no money. That's the good point. Uh, the Dow Jones, yeah, I would highlight this. It's so true and so funny. American investors grew nervous about nation with 10,000 nukes and no money. Yeah. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged more than 10% in a matter of days. People were right to worry the a rubble crisis set off a chain reaction that brought down long-term capital management. A highly leveraged U.S. hedge fund, LTCM, managed to lose 4.6 billion in the later half of 1998 and still had over 100 billion in liabilities when the Fed intervened with a massive bailout and slashed interest rates in order to prevent systematic disaster. Europe wasn't doing that much better. The euro launched in January 1999 to great skepticism and apathy. Apathy, is it correct pronunciation? Apathy. It sounds like you don't have teeth. Apathy. Lack of interest, enthusiasm. Oh yeah, or concern. Yeah, when you don't have motivation, it's apathy. Yeah. Commercial break for vocabulary. So it rose to $1.91. It rose to $1.19 on its first day of trading, but thanks to 0.83 within 2 years. In mid 2000, G7 central bankers had to prop it up with a multi-billion-dollar intervention. So the backdrop for the short-lived dot-com mania that started up in September 1998 was a world in which nothing else seemed to be working. The old economy couldn't handle the challenges of globalization. Something needed to work and work in a big way if the future was going to be better at all. By indirect proof of the new economy of the internet was the only way forward. Yeah, we see the progress of internet was impacted to all areas of our life, to the whole economy. So the next chapter with the title is Mania, September 1998, March 2000. Dot-com mania was intense but short. 18 months of insanity from September 1998 to March 2000. It was a Silicon Valley gold rush. There was money everywhere and no shortage of exuberant, often sketchy people to chase it. Every week, dozens of new startups competed to throw the most lavish launch party. Landing parties were much more rare. Paper millionaires lack, would rack up $1,000 dinner bills and try to pay with shares of their startup's stock. Sometimes it's even worked. Legions of people decamped from their well-paying jobs to found or join startups. One 40-something grad student that I knew was running 6 different companies in 1999. Usually it's considered weird to be a 40 years old graduate student. Yeah, exactly. Usually it's considered too insane to start a half dozen companies at once, but in the late 90s, people could believe that was a winning combination. But I don't think so that you focus 100% to each business. I think you have to choose just one and work on this. Put your all energy, effort, knowledge to one thing and improve it. because it's just distracting if you have more than one, I guess. So everybody should have known that the money was unsustainable. The most successful companies seem to be embrace sort of anti-business model where they lost money as they grew. But it's hard to blame people for dancing when the music was playing. Yeah, another quote that I want to highlight. It's hard to blame people for dancing when music was playing. Irrationality was rational given that appending.com to your name could double your value overnight. So after we see some graphics with the dot-com boom, like we see the period of time from 1995 to like up to 2000, 1999, and we see, the progress of shares of different companies: Netscape, IPO, Greenspan, Rational, Exuberations, Asian crisis, Russian crisis, and the last one is March 10, 2000, peak at 5,048. It's, I guess it's number of value of shares. So the next one is, I think it's about especially that's related with the author biography. It's a PayPal Mania chapter with the title PayPal Mania. So when I was running PayPal in late 1999, I was scared out of my wits, not because I didn't believe in our company, but because it seems like everyone else in the valley was ready to believe anything at all. Everywhere I looked, people were starting and flipping companies with alarming casualness. One acquaintance told me how he had planned an IPO from his living room before he even incorporated his company, and he didn't think that was weird. Interesting. Like you announcing about IPO of your company, but you even don't have this company. Yeah, interesting. And this kind of environment acting sanely began to seem eccentric. Eccentric, I think, eccentric meaning unconventional, of a person of their behavior unconventional and slightly strange. Eccentric, it's like creepy, another synonym of creepy, I guess, yeah. Another definition, technical, of a thing not placed central or not having its axis or rather. But at this context, I think it's about being weird. Acting sanely began to seem eccentric. Yeah, cringe. So, at least PayPal had a suitably grand mission, the kind that post-bubble skeptic would later describe as grandiose. We wanted to create a new internet currency to replace the US dollar. Our first product let people beam money from one pilot to another. However, nobody had any use for that product except the journalist who voted it one of the 10 worst business ideas of 1999. Palm pilots were still too exotic then, but emails was already commonplace, so we decided to create a way to send and receive payments over email. By the fall of '99, our email payment product worked well. Anyone could log into our website and easily transfer money, but we didn't have enough customers. Growth was slow and expenses mounted. Yeah, this interesting book for today. I think it's enough. We're going to continue this tomorrow because, I think it's going to be useful to understand how he built his PayPal, like step by step. Yeah, thank you for listening.